So the claim of ancient Jews in Ethiopia is more of a legend than it is facts and history. Now, you are correct to say that these books were originally Jewish, that the books that we have that are canonized in the Bible were originally Jewish books as far as the Old Testament is concerned, but there are discrepancies with the New Testament, but you can still claim that they were originally Jewish books since they was written by Hellenistic Jews. Now, the claim that Ethiopia has an ancient Jewish tradition and that the country was Jewish before it was converted to Christianity in 330 by King Azana of the Axiom Empire, which becomes the Ethiopian Empire, is filled with legends and fairy tales. And even the Ethiopian Jews there today, about 173,000 of them, and many of the Beta Israel is what they call them, have immigrated to Israel. But there are many different stories of historicity that are all just stories and none have any historical evidence. So the one, as far as them ever being a Jewish nation, they have never been a Jewish nation. There's a fairy tale of Queen Judith, and you can ascribe her to the book of Judith, but the King Judith, G-U-D-I-T, that at one point between 960 and 1000 AD or CE, that she actually conquered the capital city of Axiom and destroyed many of the churches and things of that nature. And this was done as a revenge tactic, since previously she was captured, her breasts were cut off, and then the Christians sold her to slavery, and then in her revenge she came back and conquered Axiom. There are some monuments that they claim to be the ruins of churches and buildings that she had conquered, and they call it, the Stela of Judith, or the Judith Stela, or the Judith Monument, because they're just megalithic structures that are just there. But there's no historicity or anything that suggests that those things actually happen. Further beyond that, we have the different stories, and one of the most popular ones that Haile Selassie had claimed is that Menelik, who was the son between Queen of Sheba, who was supposedly Ethiopian, and Solomon, that he was the son, and he had gained the Ark of the Covenant, and he had created a Jewish state in Ethiopia. Well, there's absolutely no history of that, and I'm going to tell you what the real religion was prior to King Azana. So there's no historicity to that. This is only claims that people make. There are other claims that those people are claiming as to how they got in there. One of the other claims is that they are descendants of the tribe of Dan, that one of Moses' son, the leader of the tribe of Dan, a person in the tribe of Dan, that he led them during the either during the Babylonian exile or during the Assyrians attacking, and he led them at different time frames. They haven't quite figured out which storyline they want to follow, into the southern Nile and then down into to Ethiopia. But again, there's no historicity of this, and there are a bunch of bumblebees flying around me right now. So there's nothing concerning, there's no historicity of that. This is just what they are claiming. There are also stories that are claiming that they were Israelites who were captured by the Ptolemies during the time frame that the Greeks ruled Egypt, and that Egypt and Israel, and these captured prisoners was brought into Egypt, and then later they escaped or migrated down into Ethiopia, and that's where Judaism established a city-state. But there's absolutely no historicity, no proof of that either. So when you look at the ancient Ethiopians prior to King Menelik, when you look at Menelik's, Ezana's, when you look at Ezana's throne, his throne is dedicated to the three main gods that were worshipped in Axiom at the time frame of the 300s, the 4th century BCE. Those three represents the primary religions of Ethiopia prior to the Abrahamic religions coming there. Those three religions, those three gods, were the god of the sun, a star, the god of the ocean, not Medes, that's Beher, and the god of war, which is Medes. They worship those three gods primarily, and then there were many gods in the pantheon. There were other ethnic religions in play as well, some that were similar to the Southern Arabia religions of the Demit Kingdom, that we have found archaeological evidence of structures and tombs and things of that nature in the Ethiopian landscape. And when you look at a map, you can see how close Ethiopia is to Saudi Arabia, so it is very plausible. But the key factor here is that there is absolutely zero archaeological evidence of ancient Jews ruling in Ethiopia. Everything concerning, or being in Ethiopia. The revolt that happened when there was a revolt, let me rephrase, there was a revolt that did happen during the time frame when Izana changed over to Christianity, and there were some Jews in the 300s, a Jewish community that revolted against this change to Christianity. That is the oldest known Jewish community in Ethiopia, in the area called Simeon, the mountains of Simeon. Those are the oldest, and from that group does all the legendized stories come from. Their own history of how they got there, no one knows. Did they come from the Babylonian exile? Did they come during the time frame that the Greeks controlled? Did they come from the time frame when the Romans controlled? They could have come during any of those time frames, but at no point were they dominant. At no point where it was the religion of Ethiopia. But just the fact that they existed is possible. From whom they existed, no one knows, not even the people who claim it. So Ethiopia has never been a Jewish state. Ethiopia worshipped multiple gods until King Ezana, in order to gain favoritism or partnership with Rome, converted to Christianity in 330. This is well after the Council of Nicaea in 325. This is well after the Edict of Milan, which made Christianity legal in 318. Constantine had Christians in his army. Therefore, Christianity wasn't a Roman religion, but it was well within Rome during that time frame before it came into Ethiopia. Christians were persecuted by Domitian. They were persecuted by many previous Roman emperors. In order for that to happen, Christianity had to be in Rome long before it ever went into Ethiopia. As a matter of fact, Egypt was part of the Roman Empire. Christianity was in Egypt for centuries before it ever came to Ethiopia. So the oldest Africans who became Christians would have been the Christians in Egypt, which occurred in the late 1st century. So that is the only place. And just because it was in Egypt, it has absolutely nothing to do with the people of West Africa. It has absolutely nothing to do with the people of Southern Africa. It has nothing to do with the people who were a part of the transatlantic slave trade. So it has nothing to do with my ancestors. Hence, I am not a Hebrew Israelite. Always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.